All right, let's head to Death Valley for this deep dive. It's that place where it hit 134 degrees, the hottest temperature ever recorded. But what's hidden beneath that scorched landscape, well, that's a watery mystery.
We tend to think of deserts as like completely dry, but under the surface, there's this fascinating hidden world.
Okay, so we're going to Devil's Hole, right? This underwater cavern in Death Valley. It's so deep we don't even know where the bottom is. Divers have gone down like 400 feet, still haven't found the bottom.
Devil's Hole, yeah, it's truly unique. It's a window into the past, full of life that's been isolated for so long.
So that brings us to, well, the star. The Devil's Hole pupfish. This tiny fish, like 2 inches long, and it only lives in this one spot. And as of the last count, 136 of them left. Even to track these guys, researchers have to use scuba divers going down into the cavern, meticulously counting each fish.
Yeah, and that one little spot is all that's between them and extinction.
So our deep dive today is all about understanding, well, how this fish ended up in such a crazy place, the challenges they face, and all the incredible things people are doing to protect them.
It's a story of resilience and adaptation and, the delicate balance of ecosystems.
First, let's figure out how Death Valley got to be like this inferno. It all starts with, was it the rain shadow effect? I need help with this one because just lack of rain doesn't cut it for me when I imagine those crazy temperatures.
Yeah, you're right. It's more than just lack of rain. So picture this. Moist air coming in from the Pacific, heading towards Death Valley, right? But then it hits a wall, a huge wall, the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Those are some big mountains. They've got to really mess with the weather.
Exactly. And as that moist air rises up over the mountains, it cools. And then all that moisture condenses and falls as rain or snow. Mostly on the western side of the mountains, though. So by the time the air gets over to Death Valley, it's been wrung out.
So Death Valley's stuck in this, like, dry air pocket. But how does that make it so hot? Is it just the sun beating down?
Well, the sun is part of it, but it's really the geography that cranks up the heat. Death Valley is like a natural convection oven. So you have a deep valley floor, right? Surrounded by these steep mountain ranges. The sun just bakes that valley floor, and all that heat radiates back up. But it gets trapped by the mountains. It creates this cycle, hot air rising, cooler air sinking, just intensifies the heat.
Like Mother Nature turned the heat up and forgot about it. And it's in this crazy environment. The Devil's Hole pupfish has not just survived, but, like, thrives.
It's true. And over thousands of years, these fish have evolved to live in conditions that would, kill most other fish. We're talking water temperatures over 93 degrees Fahrenheit and, like, surprisingly little oxygen.
Wow, that's nuts. What kind of adaptations let them live like that?
Well, one key thing is their gills. They're different, They've evolved to pull oxygen out of water that's, well, almost got none. And they can handle those high temperatures, even the quick changes in temperature that happen a lot in Devil's Hole.
Amazing how life just finds a way. But living in a place like that's got to make them, well, pretty vulnerable too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Their existence is, well, it's precarious. And that's why those population counts are so important. Divers record the numbers at different depths, and people on the surface add to the count. It's a whole team effort to understand how this fragile population is doing.
Like a constant watch, huh? Over these little fish.
You could say that. And it's not just the heat and low oxygen. There are other, well, more dramatic threats to their survival, too.
Right. Like that earthquake in 2019. Wasn't that a close one for them?
Oh, yeah, that was a major event. It really shook their world. Literally, a 7.1 magnitude earthquake. And it made these 10-foot waves that surged through Devil's Hole. Imagine. Your whole world, your only home, suddenly gets hit by a tsunami.
Wow, that must have been devastating. Did any survive?
It's amazing, but yeah. The adult pupfish, they rode out the storm, so to speak, but the earthquake wiped out a whole generation of eggs. It really shows just how fragile their existence is. One event can have a huge impact on their already tiny population.
Walking a tightrope, huh?
Yeah.
Between survival and extinction. And it's not just earthquakes they have to worry about.
Sadly, no. Even though it's a desert, floods can be a big threat, too, to Devil's Hole and everything in it. They're rare, but...
Floods. In Death Valley, that's not
Rare.
something I would have thought of. How do those affect the pupfish?
Well, even a small flood can mess with the water chemistry. It brings in sediment, disrupts the balance of, the algae and the little creatures that the pupfish eat. Their whole ecosystem can get thrown off.
Like a domino effect?
Yeah.
One small change and boom, the whole system's impacted.
Exactly. And then there's, well, the big long-term threat, climate change. Adds another layer of complexity and concern for the future of these fish.
I was just going to ask about that. Climate change seems like it would be, well, especially dangerous for a species that's already living on the edge,
Yeah.
in such a specific environment.
You're right. If we think about the bigger picture, climate change just makes the challenges they're already facing even worse. Rising temperatures mean more evaporation, so their habitat shrinks even more. And changes in weather patterns can bring more droughts, more intense droughts, making their world even harsher.
It's a race against time, isn't it? I mean, with all these threats, how do we even make sure these pupfish survive? It all just seems so fragile.
It is a race against time, yeah. And thankfully, scientists have been working really hard to protect their future.
You're talking about that Ash Meadows Fish Conservation Facility, right? It's like, I don't know, a Noah's Ark for pupfish. A refuge tank built to be like their home. It's amazing what we can do when we really try.
It really is incredible. They built this huge tank, 110,000 gallons, 22 feet deep, and they even buried it underground to be like Devil's Hole.
So it's not just an aquarium, right? It's like a whole replica of their environment.
Yeah.
How do you even go about creating something like that?
Think about it. They had to get the water chemistry right, the temperature changes, even the right kind of algae and little creatures that live in Devil's Hole. It took a ton of planning and constant checking to make sure the pupfish in there would, actually do well.
So they made like a mini Devil's Hole, a safe place for them to hopefully, breed and increase their numbers. But it's more than just having a backup, isn't it? Don't we have to fix the big problems like climate change?
You got it. Conservation, it has to be a lot of things at once. Yeah, we need to protect what we have and create these, safety nets, but we also got to tackle those big issues like climate change that are putting so many species in danger.
It makes you wonder, though, how did these pupfish even get to Devil's Hole in the first place? Their ancestors, they lived in this giant lake, Lake Manly. But then it dried up. How did they survive? It's like they could just, pack their bags and move.
That's where the story gets really interesting. They didn't just disappear when the lake started shrinking. They went underground into the aquifers.
Aquifers. Those are like underground rivers and pools, right? So they went into hiding while the world was changing above them.
Exactly. Imagine these huge networks of water under the ground. As the climate got drier, the water table dropped, and it ended up isolating groups of pupfish in these little pockets.
So over time, they adapted to these new unique environments. And one of those groups, that's the Devil's Hole pupfish, stuck in their little cavern.
Yeah, it really shows you how adaptable life is. They didn't just sit around waiting to go extinct. They found a way to make it work, to make a home in this seemingly impossible place.
It's like the power of evolution, right? They developed all these special adaptations that let them not just survive, but thrive in this crazy environment. It makes you wonder, what else is down in those aquifers? What other pieces of Lake Manly are still out there waiting to be found?
That's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Like stumbling upon another group of pupfish, some lost world under the desert. It reminds us that there's still so much we don't know about the natural world, about the hidden things right under our feet.
So we've talked about their past, their struggles now, and all the work being done to save them. But this is bigger than just one tiny fish in a desert hole, isn't it? It makes you think about our place in all of this.
Absolutely. The Devil's Hole pupfish is like a small example of the whole biodiversity crisis we're facing. It makes us ask, why should we care about this little fish in some faraway desert?
It's easy to think, oh, it's just one species. What difference does it make? But it's more than that, right?
Way more. The Devil's Hole pupfish, it's a one-of-a-kind piece of Earth's history, a symbol of, resilience and adaptation. Reminds us that everything's connected. And the choices we make, even the little ones, they ripple through the whole ecosystem.
So protecting them isn't just about saving one species. It's about protecting that balance of the whole ecosystem, right? It's all connected.
Exactly. Their fate is tied to the aquifer, the desert, the global climate, everything. They survive if we understand that and, act on it.
Their story shows that we're all in this together, huh? Our choices, all of our choices, impact the web of life.
And that brings us to a big question. What does it mean for us to be sharing this planet with these unique and vulnerable creatures? What's our responsibility to make sure they keep existing?
It's a heavy question, but we got to ask it. Because if these pupfish can survive such big changes, does that give us, a little bit of hope? A reminder that life finds a way?
I think so. It shows you how clever nature is, the power of evolution to shape life in amazing ways. But hope without action, well, that's just a feeling. We got to be good caretakers of this planet, make choices that protect all the different kinds of life, and make sure there's a healthy future for everyone.
So it's about turning that feeling of awe into something real, into action.
Exactly. The devil's hole pupfish reminds us that nature's strong, but it needs our help.
And that even small things we do can add up to something, well, much bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely. Every bit we do to lessen our impact, to support conservation, to get people talking about it, it all helps make a more sustainable future.
It's like we all have a part to play in this big story of life on Earth.
You got it. And the story of the devil's hole pupfish, it's an important chapter, reminds us of how beautiful and fragile life is and how everything's connected. A story that should push us to be responsible for this amazing planet we call home.
This deep dive has been, well, eye-opening. It's amazing how one tiny fish can make you think so much about our relationship with nature.
It's been great exploring this with you, and I hope everyone listening has gained, I don't know, a new appreciation for the devil's hole pupfish and for what their story means.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it, the whole journey of the Devil's Hole pupfish.
Yeah.
From that huge lake full of life to this tiny little cavern. They've been through so much change. Real symbols of resilience, aren't they?
You know, it gets me. It's not just surviving. They're not hanging on by a thread. They're actually thriving in, well, one of the toughest environments on Earth. That's pretty remarkable how they've adapted.
Makes you think, if they can adapt to all that, what can we learn from them? You know, with all the stuff we're facing, climate change, habitats disappearing, it feels kind of overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Their story, it really shows you how tough life can be. Even the tiniest things, they have this amazing ability to bounce back. Think about it, they've been around for thousands of years, changing with the times, finding ways to thrive no matter what.
So it's not just about making it through. It's about finding a way to, actually do well, even when things are tough.
Yeah.
Does their story, does it give us any hope with all the environmental stuff happening? I mean,
I think it does. It shows you how inventive nature is, how evolution can shape life in these, I don't know, incredible ways. Even in the most unlikely places, when everything seems stacked against them, life finds a way.
it's kind of inspiring, isn't it? This tiny fish in this desert cave has so much to teach us about, well, resilience, adaptation, how everything's connected. Like their story is a tiny version of the whole story of life on Earth.
Yeah, it highlights that web of life, the delicate balance in those ecosystems, and how what we do can have, these ripple effects. It shows how important it is for us to protect not just one species, but the whole system. Everything's connected.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Devil's Hole pupfish, I want to leave everyone with this. What can we learn from their toughness? How can we use those lessons in our own lives and for the problems we all face together?
That's a great question to think about. As you go about your day, remember that devil's hole pupfish, a tiny creature with a huge story, a symbol of hope, right? In a world that's facing some really big environmental challenges, and a strong reminder that we're all connected, sharing this amazing planet.
Well, this deep dive has been fantastic. It's amazing how much one little fish can make you think about our relationship with nature.
It's been a pleasure talking about this with you, and I hope everyone listening has come away with, I don't know, a new appreciation for the devil's hole pupfish and for what their story really means.